So last week I was at the NFL scouting combine for my other job, covering the other league, the not so fun league that doesn't have the traditions, the ambiance, the style that we embrace on Saturdays. But ultimately I went out with a bunch of NFL reporters and we got on the subject of college football. And one of my buddies asked me, who do you think is the most predictable team year in and year out in the sport? And I pondered and came up with an answer. But instead of unveiling one team, I figured, how about I pick the most predictable program in every major conference, plus one at the group of five level? And I figured today, let's turn it into a video. But before we begin, if you are new here, welcome on into the channel, people. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and the ring notification down below. That way you keep up with everything that we're doing on this channel. I know I've been away for the last several days, but we talk college football daily on this platform. Leave a comment down below. Who do you think is the most predictable team in college football year in and year out? Tell your friends, your family, your mortal enemies, best of bros, college football aficionados, and really fans of any sport in general, because we're on the race to become the #1 YouTube show talking about our favorite sport. Follow me on social media, Twitter, X, Instagram. It's the exact same as my YouTube handle, at Mr. Cole Thompson. So when you hit subscribe here, go on over to the other platforms and hit follow there. That way conversations surrounding our favorite sport never have to stop flowing. Who are college football's most predictable teams? There is analogies that go into this, and it's not simply just based off of record. There's other little tidbits that are going to be a factor in determining this. And I think every conference has one. I really do. Whether it be a team that finds a way to get an upset special year in and year out, consistently putting up the same record regardless of the talent being brought in, finding ways to have five-star talent, five-star cultures, and five-star phenoms make it to the NFL draft. You understand the process. So let's not waste any time. Let's start off in the ACC alphabetically. NC State Wolfpack. I look at the ACC, and it has been a detrimental dwindle of mediocrity for years on end. And you never get consistency or continuity. Florida State has some down years in the Willie Taggart era, at the end of the Jimbo Fisher era. Miami, the U, they're still not back. Who you? You're still waiting to get there. North Carolina, not the elite level that we think that they should be. Clemson, starting to show a little bit of regression underneath Dabo. Pivotal year in 2024. But you know who is always going to be a constant finding their way to 9+ wins? NC State. In fact, if you look at Dave Duran, since being hired in 2013, the Wolfpack have only had 2 losing seasons. They've gone 7-5 or better every year except for 2013, 2019. On top of that, they've been ranked inside the CFP poll as many times as 6. They've consistently found their way to 8-4 records since 2020. On top of that, they've also been to a multitude of bowl games. They find their way to bring in premier talent. They get an upset win here or there in the process. And this might be the year where it all culminates and we don't talk about them being predictable. You look at their schedule, they're in a very good spot. You look at who they brought in via the transfer portal, primarily Grayson McCall, now to run Robert and I's offense. You still have Kevin Compassion as your #1 wide receiver. And Dave Duran is starting to get into that underrated tier. Like, we never bring him up in conversations about ACC coaches that deserve a little bit more respect. But I can always expect NC State to go 8-4, 9-3, 7-5, get an upset win against a ranked team, drop a game that they probably should win, and lo and behold, they're going to find their way somewhere in the top 25 rankings, more than likely leaning anywhere between 18 and 24 than you would see probably 10 through 15. Big Ten, Iowa Hawkeyes, death, taxes, elite defense, no offense. And that really is the case for Iowa year in and year out. Everyone knows that Phil Parker has his certain brand and demeanor when it comes to playing defensive players. If you're not an elite freshman, you are a rotational piece. Lucas Van Ness got drafted last offseason by the Green Bay Packers, and he was a rotational specialist. There is a certain brand about what you see in Iowa City when the Hawkeyes take the field at Kinnick Stadium. There's a certain bourgeoisie that goes about this team and what they bring internally. And there's a certain mantra that works for Kirk Ferentz and Phil Parker, which is why they've basically been in control of everything that happens in that state for over 2 decades. And it's a big reason why you look at this Iowa team and you figure, well, they're going to be a contender for a Big Ten West title. How quickly can they be a contender for an actual Big Ten title? And that's kind of where the drawing line is. Every year they finish somewhere between 8-4 and 10-3. The last 3 seasons, I mean, in the last 6 years, they have gone 10-3, 6-2, 10-4, 8-5, 10-4. So they know how to find defensive consistency. They always find their way ranked. They've been ranked inside the college football playoff poll every season since 2018. They've been ranked inside the AP poll every season since 2014, at least once. And they always finish with the top 10 defense, just like they always finish with the bottom 10 offense. If they were able to kind of have a middle ground, like let's just say for a second, you go ahead and someone gets to make a giant wish in Des Moines, and they all say, I want my Hawkeyes to be the most balanced team in college football. And they found a way to get to top 50 scoring offense, top 50 in total yards, and the defense is top 50. Wouldn't you take that? Because right now you're finding ways to win with mediocre offensive talent because your defense is so star-studded awesome. Wouldn't you love to see maybe one star defensive player move to the offensive side? Cooper DeJean. Would anybody be shocked if that kid was able to play wide receiver, go for 1,000 yards, and on top of that, return punts and return kick returns the way that he did, and every once in a blue moon make a play on defense? Like, Travis Hunter is the epitome of what we look for in terms of dual threat players. I think Cooper DeJean could be another one. They know how to produce really talented defensive backs. They know how to produce exceptional pass rushers. Offensive lines basically are bred in Iowa City, so that's going to be a thing. They're never going to have the right quarterback. They never seem to have the right offensive play calling. Maybe that changes now that you no longer have Brian Ferentz at the helm. Nepotism at its finest, but you can always expect Iowa to be a contender for a Big Ten West title, or at least could when the Big Ten West still existed. Big 12, let's stay in the state. Iowa State. And to me, the reason why I put Iowa State on here is, number one, they've been to a bowl game every single year since 2018, minus 2022. On top of that, they always find their way to 7 wins. And on top of all that, they find a way to get a ranked win that nobody saw coming. Go back to 2019. They beat Texas, number 19 in the country. Go back to 2021. They beat Oklahoma State at home, number 8 in the country. Go to this past season, if you will, for a second, ladies and gentlemen. Anybody remember who they beat? Anybody? Kansas State down the stretch at the end of the year. So this is a team that's never going to have 4 or 5 stars coming in on the regular. Every once in a blue moon, they will land a premier prospect that eventually finds his way to the NFL and lives up to the expectations. They always seem to have a good run game. They always seem to have an offensive identity that presents itself as competitive, and they always seem to be right in the middle of the hunt. They're never good enough to make it all the way to the national championship, but they're never bad enough to where you're saying, good God, what the hell happened? And when it's a down year, Matt Campbell will fix that overnight to where it doesn't duplicate itself, which I think is a huge difference. SEC, Georgia Bulldogs, plain simple. They recruit like they're one of the best teams in the country. They look like they're one of the best teams in the country. They develop like one of the best teams in the country. You can expect every season Georgia to find their way to 10 plus wins. And probably they're going to be the representative in the SEC East. Quarterback play has always been a little bit tricky when it comes to NFL evaluations. Game manager mantra. You go from Jake Fromm to Stetson Bennett. JT Daniels had that MO. Even Carson Beck a little bit. Now, Beck is the best version of it to where I think if you were asking him to translate to that franchise guy, turn it on a little bit, he could. Because there was a stretch of games where you're looking back and it's Auburn coming back against, and it's Florida you play well against, and then it's games against Tennessee, and it's games against these other opponents, and you say, well, when does reality strike in and we get the normal version of Carson Beck? And you never did. And he really proved to be the best quarterback in the SEC outside of maybe Jalen Milroe on a one Saturday afternoon. And going into next year, you know he is going to be the number 1 quarterback. They find a way to replenish talent just like any other team. They find a way to produce certain positions better than most. I would go defensive line easily at the forefront of that conversation. Tight end is starting to get in there. They just brought in Ben Yasirik over from Stanford. And I promise you this, ladies and gentlemen, you don't know that name in the SEC, you're going to learn it pretty dang quick. Georgia is the epitome of just getting to 10 wins, finding themselves in at least, I would say, a New Year's Six bowl game. And also, they're probably going to find their way into the college football playoff. Group of 5 school, let's talk about this one, San Diego State. If you actually look back at San Diego State, from 2015 to 2021, they had 5 10 plus win seasons. If you go all the way back to 2010, they've only missed 2 bowl games, one coming in 2020 during the COVID-19 year, and one in the final year of the Brady Hoke era where they went 4-8. They always seem to be in the contention status when it comes to winning the Mountain West, and they always seem to give troubles and fits to the other opponents in the conference, whether it be UNLV or Boise State or Colorado State. So San Diego State has that MO, just like Fresno State, but they usually carry that category of we're going to be right dab smack in the middle. There was a rumor and a speculation to why San Diego State was even mentioned when it came to expansion in what is now the defunct Pac-12, and they would have made a lot of sense. And the main reason why they would have made a lot of sense is because you look at what they bring elementally to the table, you know that they are going to always have great performances. Maybe not elite players, maybe not elite game management, but they are going to have stellar games against really quality teams. I want to throw 2 audible mentions on here for different reasons. If we had the Pac-12, I would immediately include Oregon. And here's the reason why. Oregon is a consistent 10-win team. They had 10 wins every year from 2008 to 2013. Then they had 10 wins in 2019, 21, 22, and 23. It doesn't matter who is the head coach, unless it is a really detrimental year where the quarterback play is insufficient, where the defense is taking a step back, where the offensive line is a plague of injuries. They're going to find their way to double-digit wins. And it could be underneath Chip Kelly. It could be underneath Mark Herflick. It could be underneath Willie Taggart. It could be underneath Mario. Dan Lanning's done it. And they always seem to land a premier player in the transfer portal. This offseason, they added in an incredible quarterback option with basically left-handed Bo Nix and Dylan Gabriel. But they also brought in 2 other guys in both Jabbar Muhammad and probably the biggest name of all, Evan Stewart. Now, if Evan Stewart doesn't pan out and turn into the wide receiver that he once was coming into Texas A&M, that's kind of on him at this point, because you look at the injuries and you look at the cascade of problems that were in College Station, you can't really blame him for that. But now that he gets an opportunity to work opposite of a very good wide receiver too in Tez Johnson and an established quarterback that's worked well with everybody in an offense that's very team-friendly underneath Will Stein, you expect the Ducks to not only be a contender for the college football playoff and national championship, but they may be the only team that can actually hold their own against Ohio State whenever these two meet up. And yes, there is a legit shot that they play against each other on 3 different occasions. Once in the regular season, once in the Big 12 title game, and once again in the college football playoff. And wouldn't that be something? Being able to watch Chip Kelly go up against his former team alongside Ryan Day. And on top of that, you get one of the best defensive minds in the sport scheming up against one of the best offensive gurus. 2 of them, really, if you put it all together. That's Oregon for you. They're always going to be a team that finds their way to 10 wins. And when the Pac-12 existed, you knew that there was going to be someone they faced off against in the Pac-12 title game. Maybe it was Colorado. Maybe it was Utah. Maybe every once in a blue moon it was Washington. But at the end of the day, you knew for a fact that it was always going to be Oregon. One more for you, Alabama. You can't tell the story without Nick Saban. Because basically, when you think about the definition of predictable and consistency, there's a giant photo, like about, an 8x10 in the dictionary of just Saban's face. And there's a reason for that. Because he demanded excellence. He didn't care if you were a walk-on. He didn't care if you were a 5-star. He didn't care if you started anywhere else and just wanted to transfer in. If you did not deliver, the whole team suffered. They had an MO in Tuscaloosa underneath Saban to where everybody was beating in the same unique drive. And if you couldn't be a part of it, you were shown the door. And you know what happened? 9 times out of 10, Alabama got to 10 wins. In fact, they always got to 10 wins underneath Nick Saban. They always found themselves in contention for a New Year's Six bowl bid. They've been to the college football playoff more often than not. The most number 1 picks by any coach in college football over the last decade. On top of that, they've always been a contender for the SEC title game. And usually they win a lot of national championships. In fact, if you look at Nick Saban just in general, he has the most national titles. He's tied with Bear in Tuscaloosa, but when you throw in the one that he got in 2003 down in Baton Rouge, it's very hard to say otherwise. But they're all predictable. You can predict Alabama is going to be a team that fights for a college football playoff spot. Or at least you could have back in the day. Now with Kalen DeBoer running the show, it's a giant ripple effect of what to expect moving forward. Fans expect 10 wins, but you and I, people who actually understand that sometimes change leads to positive net gain, even if it takes a year to get there, you may want to temper your expectations. But those are the teams I think are the most predictable. Comment below, who is the most predictable team in college football 2024, really every single season. Continue to follow me on social media, Twitter, X, Instagram, at Mr. Cole Thompson. Make sure that you like the video, subscribe down below, leave a comment on anything you want. And as always, I'm Cole Thompson. Until next time, folks, later.